Imagine a world locked in ice, a place where mammoths roamed, saber-tooths hunted, and humans, like you and me, were just learning to survive. This is not a fantasy. This was Earth. And today, I'll tell you what happened. When the Ice Age gripped the planet, the wind howls across endless white expanses, glaciers tower like frozen mountains, their blue-white faces reflecting a pale sun that offers little warmth. In this world, death lurks behind every snowdrift, every frozen stream, every cave entrance where predators might wait. Yet somehow, against all odds, our ancestors not only survived but thrived in conditions that would challenge even our most advanced modern survival expert. This is the story of humanity's greatest test. A trial by ice that lasted hundreds of thousands of years and shaped everything about who we are today. From the clothes we wear to the languages we speak, from our deepest fears to our most profound innovations, the Ice Age left its fingerprints on every aspect of human civilization. It was during these frozen millennia that we learned to be truly human, developing the cooperation, creativity, and resilience that would eventually allow us to dominate the planet. The Ice Age, more accurately known as the Pleistocene, began around 2.6 million years ago and lasted until about 11,700 years ago. But calling it the Ice Age is somewhat misleading, as it suggests one continuous period of frozen hell. In reality, Earth experienced a complex dance of climate cycles, swinging between glacial periods of intense cold and interglacial periods of relative warmth that could last tens of thousands of years. During the most severe glacial periods, massive ice sheets stretched across continents like frozen oceans. These weren't just patches of snow and ice, but towering walls of compressed frozen water that could reach heights of over a mile thick. The Laurentide ice sheet covered most of Canada and extended deep into what is now the northern United States, while the Fennoscandian ice sheet blanketed Scandinavia and much of northern Europe. In Asia, glaciers carved through mountain ranges and spread across vast plains, creating a landscape that would be utterly alien to modern eyes. The sheer scale of these ice sheets is difficult to comprehend. They contained so much frozen water that global sea levels dropped by as much as 400 feet below current levels. This dramatic change in ocean height exposed vast areas of the continental shelf, creating land bridges that would prove crucial to human migration. The most famous of these was the Bering Land Bridge, a 1,000-mile-wide expanse of tundra that connected Asia and North America, but similar bridges appeared between Britain and continental Europe, between Australia and New Guinea, and in countless other locations around the world. These changing landscapes created entirely new ecosystems. Where once there had been temperate forests, now stretched endless grasslands called mammoth steppes. These were not the lush prairies we might imagine, but harsh, windswept plains dominated by hardy grasses and shrubs that could survive in permafrost conditions. The vegetation was sparse but nutritious, supporting massive herds of megafauna that would become both the greatest opportunity and the greatest threat our ancestors would face. What caused these dramatic climate shifts remains one of the most fascinating puzzles in Earth science. The primary driver appears to have been changes in Earth's orbital patterns, known as Milankovitch cycles. These subtle variations in our planet's tilt, orbit shape, and wobble affected how much solar radiation different parts of Earth received during different seasons. When northern hemisphere summers became cooler due to these orbital changes, snow and ice that accumulated during winter wouldn't fully melt, gradually building up into the massive ice sheets that defined the glacial periods. But orbital mechanics alone couldn't explain the full complexity of Ice Age climate. Volcanic activity played a crucial role. with massive eruptions spewing ash and sulfur compounds into the atmosphere that could block sunlight and trigger rapid cooling. Changes in ocean currents, driven by the formation and melting of ice sheets, created feedback loops that could amplify or dampen climate changes. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels fluctuated dramatically, sometimes dropping to less than half of pre-industrial levels, further intensifying the cooling effects. For the early humans living through these changes, the underlying causes were irrelevant. What mattered was the immediate reality of a world that could shift from relatively hospitable to utterly hostile within a few generations. Entire regions that had supported human populations for thousands of years could become uninhabitable as glaciers advanced or as changing precipitation patterns turned grasslands into deserts. The challenge wasn't just surviving the cold, but adapting to a world in constant flux, where the strategies that worked for one generation might prove fatal for the next. By around 300,000 years ago, early humans had already established themselves across much of Africa. These were Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, but they shared the world with other human species that had evolved different strategies for survival. Neanderthals had adapted to the cold climates of Europe and Western Asia, developing robust bodies and sophisticated tool technologies. Denisovans occupied parts of Asia, while other human species, now known only from fragmentary fossils, inhabited various corners of the Old World. The early Homo sapiens of Africa were already remarkable creatures. They had developed complex language, sophisticated tool-making techniques, and social structures that allowed them to coordinate group activities on a scale unprecedented in the animal kingdom. They could plan for the future, share knowledge across generations, and adapt their behavior based on changing circumstances. These cognitive abilities would prove absolutely crucial as they began to encounter the challenges of Ice Age environments. As glacial periods intensified and expanded, human populations faced a stark choice: adapt or perish. Many groups undoubtedly chose poorly and vanished from the archaeological record, their stories lost forever. But others began the long process of cultural and technological adaptation that would eventually allow humans to thrive in some of the most hostile environments on Earth. The human body was spectacularly ill-equipped for Ice Age survival. Unlike the woolly mammoths and other megafauna that dominated the frozen landscapes, humans had no natural insulation beyond a thin layer of body hair. They lacked the claws, fangs, or natural weapons that other predators used to hunt and defend themselves. Their digestive systems couldn't process the tough, fibrous vegetation that sustained many Ice Age herbivores. In almost every measurable way, humans seemed destined to become evolutionary footnotes. Another species that couldn't adapt quickly enough to survive dramatic climate change. But humans had one overwhelming advantage: their brains, the same cognitive abilities that had allowed them to develop language and complex social structures now turned toward the problem of survival in impossible conditions. They began to observe the natural world with unprecedented precision, noting which animals had the warmest fur, which plants remained edible through winter, which cave formations provided the best shelter from wind and predators. The development of clothing represents one of humanity's first great technological leaps. Early humans learned to carefully skin animals, preserving not just the meat for food, but the hides for protection. They developed techniques for scraping, cleaning, and treating these hides to make them supple and durable. Archaeological evidence suggests they created needles from bone and sinew from animal tendons, allowing them to sew fitted garments that could trap body heat, while still allowing freedom of movement. Fire control became another crucial survival technology. While humans may have been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years before the Ice Age, the extreme cold made fire mastery a matter of life and death. They learned to maintain fires through long winter nights, to transport fire from camp to camp, and to start fires even in wet or windy conditions. Fire provided warmth, light, protection from predators, and the ability to cook food, making tough Ice Age vegetation and meat more digestible and nutritious. Shelter construction evolved from simple windbreaks to sophisticated structures designed to maximize warmth and minimize heat loss. Humans learned to select cave sites that provided natural protection while avoiding those that might flood or collapse. When caves weren't available, they constructed shelters using mammoth bones, animal hides, and whatever other materials the harsh landscape provided. Some of these structures were remarkably sophisticated, with multiple rooms, storage areas, and even primitive ventilation systems. Tool technology advanced rapidly under the pressure of Ice Age survival. Simple stone choppers evolved into specialized implements designed for specific tasks. Scrapers for preparing hides, needles for sewing, spear points for hunting, and blades for butchering. The quality of stone tool manufacture reached levels that wouldn't be surpassed until the development of metalworking thousands of years later. The Ice Age world was dominated by creatures that would seem mythological to modern eyes. Woolly mammoths, standing up to 11 feet tall and weighing as much as 6 tons, roamed the mammoth steppes in vast herds. Their curved tusks could reach 16 feet in length, and their thick, shaggy coats protected them from temperatures that could drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. These weren't the only giants stalking the frozen landscape. Giant ground sloths, some as large as modern elephants, browsed on tough vegetation with massive claws designed for stripping bark and leaves. Cave bears, significantly larger than any modern bear species, competed with humans for the best shelter sites. Perhaps most terrifying of all were the saber-toothed cats, apex predators with canine teeth that could grow up to 7 inches long. These weren't the only predatory threats humans faced. Cave lions, larger than any modern lion, hunted in prides across the European steppes. Short-faced bears, standing over 12 feet tall on their hind legs, were built for speed and could run down prey across open terrain. Dire wolves, with bone-crushing jaws and pack-hunting strategies, posed a constant threat to human groups. For early humans, these megafauna represented both the greatest opportunity and the greatest danger of Ice Age life. A single mammoth could provide enough meat to feed a large group for weeks or even months. The hide could be used for shelter construction, the bones for tools and building materials, the fat for fuel and food preservation. Mammoth ivory was carved into tools, weapons, and art objects. Even mammoth dung, dried and preserved in the cold, could serve as fuel for fires when wood was scarce. But hunting these giants required unprecedented levels of cooperation and planning. A single human with a spear was no match for a healthy adult mammoth. Success required coordinated group efforts involving dozens of individuals, each playing a specific role in complex hunting strategies that might take days or weeks to execute. Archaeological evidence suggests humans developed sophisticated techniques for hunting including driving herds over cliffs, trapping animals in natural or constructed pits, and using fire to control animal movements. The famous mammoth bone houses found across Eastern Europe and Siberia represent some of the most impressive achievements of Ice Age engineering. These structures, built entirely from the bones of hunted mammoths, required the remains of dozens of animals, and represented massive investments of time and labor by entire communities. The largest of these bone houses contained over 400 mammoth skulls and could shelter extended families through the harshest winter conditions. Hunting strategies varied depending on the prey and the landscape. For smaller animals like reindeer or horses, humans developed sophisticated tracking techniques, following herds across vast distances and learning to predict their seasonal movements. They created complex trap systems using natural terrain features, driving animals into narrow valleys or across frozen rivers where they could be more easily killed. Spear throwers, or atlatls, increased the power and accuracy of hunting weapons, allowing humans to kill large animals from safer distances. The relationship between humans and megafauna wasn't entirely predatory. Archaeological evidence suggests that some human groups may have engaged in a form of proto-domestication with certain species. Reindeer, in particular, seem to have developed close relationships with human communities, providing not just meat and hides, but also transportation and milk. These relationships may have been the foundation for the reindeer herding cultures that still exist in the Arctic today. Cave paintings found throughout Europe and Asia provide remarkable insights into how Ice Age humans viewed their relationship with the megafauna around them. The caves of Lascaux in France, Altamira in Spain, and Chauvet in France contain some of the most sophisticated artistic achievements in human history. These weren't simple decorations, but complex narrative works that may have served multiple functions: recording hunting successes, teaching young people about animal behavior, conducting religious or spiritual rituals, or simply expressing the human need to create beauty even in the harshest conditions. The artistic techniques displayed in these cave paintings are remarkably sophisticated. Artists used the natural contours of cave walls to create three-dimensional effects, employed multiple pigments to achieve realistic coloring, and demonstrated detailed knowledge of animal anatomy and behavior. Some paintings show animals in motion, with techniques for suggesting movement that wouldn't be rediscovered until the development of modern animation. The fact that humans were creating such sophisticated art while struggling for basic survival speaks to the fundamental importance of creative expression in human nature. Despite facing conditions that would challenge modern survival experts, equipped with advanced technology, Ice-aged humans didn't merely survive. They created rich, complex cultures that laid the foundation for all subsequent human civilization. The harsh realities of Ice-aged life, rather than crushing human creativity and social development, seemed to accelerate the evolution of uniquely human cultural practices. Burial practices during the Ice Age reveal sophisticated concepts of death, spirituality, and social organization. At sites like Sunjir in Russia, archaeologists have discovered elaborate burials dating back over 30,000 years. These graves contain not just human remains, but carefully crafted grave goods. Ivory spears, beaded clothing made from thousands of individually carved mammoth ivory beads, and ornamental objects that would have required hundreds of hours to create. The famous burial of two children at laid head-to-head and covered in over 10,000 ivory beads, represents one of the most spectacular examples of Ice Age ceremonial behavior. These burial practices suggest that Ice Age humans had developed complex beliefs about death and the afterlife. The time and resources invested in creating grave goods indicate that communities were willing to sacrifice valuable materials and countless hours of labor to honor their dead. This behavior goes far beyond simple disposal of bodies and suggests sophisticated concepts of personal identity, social status, and spiritual continuation after death. Jewelry and personal ornamentation became increasingly sophisticated during the Ice Age. Humans learned to work with a variety of materials, creating beads from mammoth, ivory, shells, stones, and even fossilized materials. These weren't simple decorations, but complex symbolic systems that likely conveyed information about social status, group membership, personal achievements, or spiritual beliefs. The technical skill required to create some Ice Age jewelry rivals that of modern craftspeople, with perfectly spherical beads, drilled with holes so small they could only have been made with the finest bone needles. The development of symbolic art during the Ice Age represents one of the most significant leaps in human cognitive evolution. Beyond the famous cave paintings, humans created portable art objects, carved figurines, decorated tools, and abstract symbols that appear across vast geographical distances. The Venus figurines, small carved representations of women found from Western Europe to Siberia, suggest the existence of shared symbolic systems that transcended local group boundaries. These figurines, with their exaggerated feminine features, may have represented fertility goddesses, ancestral spirits, or idealized concepts of womanhood. Language almost certainly underwent rapid development during the Ice Age. The complex coordination required for megafauna hunting, the sophisticated tool-making techniques, and the elaborate social rituals all suggest that humans had developed rich, nuanced languages capable of conveying abstract concepts, detailed technical information, and complex social relationships. While we can't directly study Ice Age languages, the archaeological evidence suggests linguistic sophistication that may have equaled or exceeded that of many modern languages. Music likely emerged as a crucial cultural practice during the Ice Age. Bone flutes found at sites across Europe demonstrate that humans were creating sophisticated musical instruments over 40,000 years ago. These weren't simple noisemakers but carefully crafted instruments capable of producing complex melodies. The social functions of music in Ice Age communities probably included entertainment, religious ritual, group bonding, and the transmission of cultural information through songs and chant. The role of storytelling in Ice Age culture cannot be overstated. Around the fires that provided warmth and protection through long winter nights, humans developed the oral traditions that would preserve and transmit cultural knowledge across generations. These stories likely served multiple functions: entertainment during the long, dark months of winter, education for young people learning essential survival skills, preservation of historical information about successful hunting grounds, dangerous areas, and seasonal patterns, and the development of shared mythologies that reinforced group identity and social cohesion. Community cooperation reached unprecedented levels during the Ice Age. The archaeological evidence suggests that successful human groups developed sophisticated systems for sharing resources, coordinating group activities, and caring for vulnerable members. Sites like Dolní Věstanice in the Czech Republic show evidence of specialized craft production, with different individuals focusing on specific skills like tool making, hide preparation, or artistic creation. This specialization suggests that Ice Age communities had moved beyond simple survival mode to develop complex economic and social systems. The care of disabled or injured community members provides some of the most moving evidence of Ice Age humanity. Skeletal remains show that individuals with serious injuries or disabilities were kept alive and cared for by their communities, sometimes for years after injuries that would have been immediately fatal without group support. This behavior demonstrates that Ice Age humans had developed concepts of compassion, social responsibility, and human dignity that transcended simple survival calculations. As ice sheets advanced and retreated across the continents, human populations faced constant pressure to move, adapt, or perish. The great migrations of the Ice Age represent some of the most remarkable journeys in human history. Epic movements of people across thousands of miles of hostile terrain, guided by nothing more than observation, instinct, and an indomitable will to survive. The most famous of these migrations was the peopling of the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge. As sea levels dropped during glacial maxima, a vast expanse of tundra emerged between Siberia and Alaska, creating a highway for both animals and humans. This wasn't a single crossing by a small group, but a complex process involving multiple waves of migration over thousands of years. The first humans to cross into the Americas encountered a continent teeming with megafauna that had never experienced human predation. Giant ground sloths, American lions, short-faced bears, and massive herds of horses, camels, and bison. These early American pioneers faced unique challenges, unlike their Old World cousins, who had gradually adapted to Ice Age conditions over hundreds of thousands of years. The first Americans had to rapidly adjust to entirely new environments, new prey species, and new predatory threats. Archaeological evidence suggests they succeeded spectacularly, spreading from Alaska to the southern tip of South America in just a few thousand years, one of the most rapid continental colonizations in human history. The migration to Australia represents an even more remarkable achievement. Unlike the Americas, Australia was never connected to the Asian mainland by land bridges. Reaching Australia required sophisticated boat-building technology and navigation skills, as well as the courage to launch into open ocean without knowing what lay beyond the horizon. The fact that humans reached Australia over 50,000 years ago, during some of the harshest conditions of the Ice Age, demonstrates technological and cognitive capabilities that rival those of much later civilizations. European migrations during the Ice Age were equally impressive, though they involved movement across familiar continental terrain rather than oceanic voyages. As ice sheets advanced and retreated, human populations were forced to abandon traditional territories and seek new homes. These movements weren't random wanderings, but carefully planned expeditions that required detailed knowledge of seasonal patterns, animal migrations, and resource availability across vast geographical areas. The technological innovations that emerged from these migrations were remarkable. In the coldest regions, humans developed the first tailored clothing, with fitted garments designed to trap body heat while allowing freedom of movement. Archaeological evidence from Siberian sites shows sophisticated cold-weather gear, including fur-lined parkas, waterproof boots made from animal intestines, and even primitive snowshoes for traveling across deep snow. Housing technology adapted to local conditions and available materials. In areas with abundant mammoth populations, humans built elaborate structures from mammoth bones and tusks. In forested regions, they constructed sophisticated wooden shelters with complex ventilation systems. On the treeless steppes, they learned to build semi-subterranean houses that took advantage of the Earth's natural insulation. Some of these structures were remarkably large and sophisticated, capable of housing extended families through the harshest winter conditions. Tool technologies diversified as human populations encountered new environments and challenges. Arctic populations developed specialized hunting equipment for marine mammals, including sophisticated harpoons and ice fishing gear. Forest dwellers created tools optimized for woodworking and plant processing. Plains hunters developed long-distance, projectile weapons capable of bringing down the largest megafauna. This technological diversification represents one of the earliest examples of human adaptation to specific ecological niches. The social implications of these migrations were profound. Groups that had lived in the same territories for generations were forced to abandon ancestral lands and traditional ways of life. This constant movement prevented the development of permanent settlements, but encouraged the evolution of portable technologies and flexible social systems. Successful migrating groups had to be able to quickly assess new environments, identify available resources, and adapt their survival strategies to unfamiliar conditions. Trade networks began to emerge during these migrations, as groups encountered new materials and technologies in their travels. Archaeological evidence shows that valuable materials like high-quality stone for toolmaking, shells for jewelry, and amber for decoration were traded across vast distances. These early trade networks not only facilitated the exchange of goods, but also the spread of technological innovations, artistic styles, and cultural practices. The psychological impact of these migrations on human development cannot be underestimated. Groups that successfully completed epic journeys across hostile terrain developed confidence, resilience, and problem-solving abilities that would serve them well in future challenges. The experience of successfully adapting to radically different environments may have contributed to the human capacity for innovation and cultural flexibility that would later enable the development of agriculture, cities, and complex civilizations. Around 11,700 years ago, the Earth began its most recent transition from glacial to interglacial conditions. This wasn't a gradual warming, but a relatively rapid climate shift that fundamentally altered the planet's ecosystems. Within just a few thousand years, for human populations that had spent hundreds of generations adapting to Ice Age conditions, this warming represented both an opportunity and a crisis. The retreat of the massive ice sheets was a spectacular geological event. Glaciers that had dominated the landscape for tens of thousands of years began to melt, releasing enormous quantities of fresh water into the oceans. This meltwater carved new river valleys, created vast lakes, and raised sea levels by hundreds of feet. The Bering Land Bridge disappeared beneath rising waters, permanently separating the populations of Asia and the Americas. Similar land bridges around the world were submerged, isolating populations that had been connected for millennia. The megafauna that had dominated Ice Age ecosystems began to disappear with startling rapidity. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, cave bears, and dozens of other species went extinct within a few thousand years of the warming. The causes of these extinctions remain hotly debated among scientists. Climate change certainly played a role, as the warming eliminated the cold, dry grasslands that had supported many of these species. But human hunting pressure may have been equally important, particularly for species that had evolved without human predation. The extinction of the megafauna forced human populations to completely restructure their survival strategies. Hunting techniques that had been perfected over thousands of years became obsolete almost overnight. The massive communal hunts that had provided the foundation for Ice Age social organization were no longer possible. When the largest prey animals had vanished, groups that had specialized in mammoth hunting were forced to adapt to hunting smaller, more elusive prey or to develop entirely new subsistence strategies. Some human populations responded to these changes by intensifying their exploitation of plant resources. The warming climate made many previously inedible plants more abundant and nutritious. Groups began to develop more sophisticated techniques for processing plant foods, including grinding, cooking, and fermentation methods that could make tough or toxic plants edible. These innovations laid the groundwork for the agricultural revolution that would follow. Other groups turned to marine resources as terrestrial megafauna disappeared. Coastal populations developed sophisticated fishing technologies, including nets, hooks, and boats capable of venturing into open water. The abundance of fish, shellfish, and marine mammals in post-glacial oceans provided reliable protein sources that could support larger, more sedentary populations than had been possible during the Ice Age. The social implications of the end of the Ice Age were profound. The small, mobile groups that had characterized Ice Age society began to give way to larger, more permanent settlements. With more reliable food sources and less need for constant migration, human populations could invest in permanent structures, accumulate possessions, and develop more complex social hierarchies. These changes set the stage for the development of agriculture, which would emerge independently in multiple locations around the world within a few thousand years of the ice retreat. The genetic legacy of the Ice Age became permanently embedded in human populations. The extreme selective pressures of glacial conditions had favored certain traits: the ability to efficiently metabolize fats and proteins, resistance to cold and infectious diseases, and cognitive abilities related to spatial navigation and long-term planning. These adaptations, forged in the crucible of Ice Age survival, continue to influence human physiology and behavior today. Cultural practices that had emerged during the Ice Age persisted long after the glaciers retreated. The storytelling traditions that had preserved crucial survival information, Ice Age fires, evolved into the mythologies and oral histories of later civilizations. The artistic techniques developed in Ice Age caves influenced the development of later artistic traditions. The social cooperation that had been essential for Ice Age survival became the foundation for the complex societies that would emerge in the post-glacial world. The Ice Age ended, but its influence on humanity never truly disappeared. Every time we put on a coat against the cold, we're using technology first, developed by our Ice Age ancestors. Every time we tell stories around a campfire, we're participating in traditions that began in mammoth bone shelters during the longest nights of the Pleistocene. Every time we work together to solve a difficult problem, we're drawing on social skills that were literally matters of life and death for our ancestors facing the challenges of a frozen world. The genetic legacy of the Ice Age lives on in our DNA. The mutations that helped our ancestors survive extreme cold, process high-fat diets, and resist infectious diseases are still present in modern human populations. But cognitive abilities that allowed Ice Age humans to track animals across vast distances, remember complex seasonal patterns, and coordinate group activities, continue to influence how we think and learn today. Perhaps most importantly, the Ice Age taught humanity that we could survive anything. Our ancestors faced conditions that would challenge modern humans equipped with advanced technology, and not only survived but created art, music, and complex cultures that rival anything produced by later civilizations. They proved that human ingenuity, cooperation, and determination could overcome even the most hostile environments. The story of Ice Age survival is ultimately a story about what makes us human. Faced with impossible challenges, our ancestors didn't just adapt, they created and built the foundations for everything that would follow. They showed that humans are not just another species struggling for survival, but something unique in the natural world. Creatures capable of transforming challenges into opportunities, of finding beauty in the harshest conditions, and of working together to achieve what no individual could accomplish alone. As we face our own environmental challenges in the modern world, the story of Ice Age humanity offers both inspiration and practical lessons. Our ancestors proved that humans can adapt to dramatic climate change, that cooperation and innovation can overcome seemingly impossible obstacles, and that the human spirit can not only survive but thrive in conditions that would seem to make survival impossible. The Ice Age may have ended over 11,000 years ago, but its lessons remain as relevant today as they were to our ancestors huddled around fires in mammoth bone shelters, planning their next hunt and dreaming of warmer days to come. In their courage, creativity, and determination, we can see not just our past, but our potential future, a reminder that no challenge is too great for human ingenuity and cooperation to overcome. We walk on land once carved by glaciers. We speak languages shaped by firelit nights, and every time we look at a cave painting, we remember the courage of those who came before us. If you found warmth in their story, like, share, and subscribe, because I'll tell you what happened is far from frozen in time.